Hey everybody, Raven here. I don't really have a whole lot of any news or anything to go through today because not much has been happening. I haven't heard a whole lot recently. I don't see much online. To be honest, I've reached a point where I've stopped even going to their website, looking at their stuff. I can't take it anymore. It's always just the same thing over and over that has nothing to it and it's trash. And so I don't want to toy with that kind of thing. But I am constantly watching, looking for anything in the news, any updates anywhere. Or if maybe they do come up with some new documents or something, I might check it out. But for the most part, I am not going to go to them for information anymore. I'm done with that. I've already gone through enough of it to know what they're teaching is wrong. What they've got there is so many lies. It's not worth trying anymore. But I am still going to be going through what I've already found, what I've already been given, that I haven't shared entirely yet. So today, which, as I said, may not go as long as usual, I'm guessing 45 minutes to an hour. Maybe less. Maybe a tiny bit more, depending on where things go, what happens. But I'm going to keep going through their Q&A document. There's so much in this, I'm probably going to be going through this for quite a while. Especially if more news pops up. Because the more news we get, the less of this I'm going to be able to do, and so the longer it's going to take to go through it. But right now, I feel like this is one of those things that is good to go through because this is what they try to use on people. If you haven't seen earlier videos on it, that's why I go through this all the time. This document is all about how they answer people who visit. This is something their members read, they look at. Which, when you have to coach how to answer questions like this, and these aren't theological questions, some of them are, but the majority of them are not. This is just simple questions of how do you do things, what happens. To need to coach them how to do that is beyond me. That's just ridiculous. That tells you something's wrong. To be honest, I think part of this is the way that Homestead, unlike some cults, really wants to at least appear to be part of a community, appear to be part of everything else. But the problem is when you've got people who are so in this bubble of indoctrinating and you have to listen to what we tell you, you can't go to any other sources, it's all by us. They rely so much on the leaders. I think this kind of document, this is just my guess, could be simply them fulfilling a necessity that they've created because people aren't ready to answer questions themselves because they rely so much on the leadership to tell them their own views, their own beliefs. So this is a must. Otherwise, they have no idea what to tell people when they visit. Now, I don't know if it's that far at Homestead, but I wouldn't be too surprised. And I especially wouldn't be surprised if this is the kind of thing that would be necessary for other cults to try to do similar things. So yeah. In a way, I can understand why it would be done, but at the same time, when your people can't think for themselves, it's disgusting that they would do something like this for that, because that would mean they're just going to take more advantage of it. They're going to take more control of it. And that right there, that's the whole problem with a cult. So, as I continue through this, consider this may not just be people reading this to think, how do I answer them? It's more of people reading this so that they themselves believe this. So that they themselves can put enough trust in their leaders. That's the other side of this. So let's get into it. Why do you use only organic methods of farming? Kind of touch on that in another question, but it's the later part of this that makes it different. Don't you think you could get better yields with modern methods, fertilizers, insecticides, and herbicides? Then, are you environmentalists? I'm going to go out on a limb in a sense. Again, right now, I'm going to do my own speculation for a moment. Okay? This is just my guess from what I've seen, what I've read, what I've heard, putting reasoning to it. Here's a pretty good guess of what's really going on here. This last question is where it sounds very accusatory. Notice the questions they ask. They don't bring up the whole things of technology. They don't really bring up anything about, using tractors or engines or anything like that. All they talk about here, okay? Fertilizers, insecticides, herbicides. That's different. There's this weird thing, okay? Those products can be something that environmentalists would try to push. But that is not all they're used for. There are plenty of people I know who are not environmentalists who still think that's better to avoid those things and do more organic methods. It's weird. The way this is being used here, I think, is almost to make the people go a different direction than them, but aren't environmentalists, feel like that what they're doing is environmental. Again, speculation. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they're doing with this. But let's see how they go with this in the answers, and let's see what they focus on. So, Blair Adams. It is true that we might temporarily get better yields by shooting up the land. Yeah, there's a good way to promote it. Use that wording. Like an athlete or racehorse pumped full of steroids or amphetamines in order to win a race. Wow. Yet, in the long run, such methods deplete the life of the soil and add sometimes dangerous disease-causing chemicals to food, as well as degrading and demeaning the value of what you shoot up. So we choose instead the rhythms and music of the returning way. Do I need to say those two words again? They very much promote that kind of stuff. This is not just Christianity, and I don't think it's Christianity at all, really, with what they teach. But there's other stuff in here that should not be here if you're trying to be Christian. If by environmentalists you mean people on a crusade with themselves as the messiahs, saving the planet and bludgeoning others with as much political power as the self-styled messiahs can grab in order to force their salvation on everyone else, destroying everyone's rights in the same name of everyone and everything else's, then we are not environmentalists. Can I take off the majority of that sentence? Because yes, the latter part, I'll agree, I don't necessarily see them being. However, that first section, I do. Bludgeoning others was as... Wait, where was it? People on a crusade. That's them. With themselves as the messiahs. That's them. Saving the planet. That's them. Bludgeoning others. That's them. With as much political power as self-styled messiahs. Now, depending on what you mean by political, that could be them as well. Can grab in order to force their salvation on everyone else. That is very close to being them. Maybe not everyone else, but every other Christian. You're trying to. Destroying everyone's rights in the name of everyone and everything else's. That's what you do within your community. Then we are not environmentalists. Do you see what the trick with this was? I'm going to remove one word that makes it so that the majority of this does not quite fit them. Let's see what the difference is. If by environmentalists you mean people on a crusade with themselves as the messiahs, saving the planet and bludgeoning others with as much power as the self-styled messiahs can grab in order to force their salvation on everyone else, destroying everyone else's rights in the name of everyone and everything else's, then we are not environmentalists. As soon as you take out political, that describes them to a T. We do, however, have a relationship with the land, love the land, try to husband and care for and conserve it according to more traditional and time-tested ways, and to the best of our abilities. That would not be too big of a deal, too upsetting, too much of a problem, if once again it wasn't for one single word. Relationship. Having a relationship with the land. God put a curse upon that land. That is New Age. Once again, those two words. They really have no idea what they're part of. So I would say we are preservationists. Okay. In terms of the old ways of farming and living, of values and beliefs, but we are conservationists in terms of the earth and its resources. Isn't that an environmentalist? Let's go ahead and look at some of the other stuff. Next answer. We just don't like all these chemicals. All those chemicals are doing what? Let's start over. We just don't feel like all those chemicals are good for us and our children. We aren't farming primarily for commercial purposes. Well, thanks for letting us know. We can compost our own organic fertilizer, but we can't make the synthetic ones. Okay. This, to me, kind of goes against Blair Adams' answer. Not because he's going at it with a different approach necessarily, not necessarily because he's got a different view, but because what he's saying here implies that they're perfectly fine with it. That they would do it that way if they had more resources. Whereas what Blair Adams says is they do it that way more because of their teachings, their beliefs. So there's a big contradiction between that first answer and this answer, which only tells me more and more these answers aren't real. These answers are all contrived for the people there at Homestead and the people they talk to outside. Also, studies have shown that all the chemicals used in agribusiness are killing the soil. Environmentalists are people who use the government to impose their beliefs on other people. Once again, as I did up above, let me remove a few words from that statement and show you just how much this is hypocritical. Environmentalists are people who impose their beliefs on others. All that's different is the method. They're doing the same thing. Although we feel a responsibility to be good stewards of the earth that God gave us to take dominion over, we certainly do not impose our beliefs on others. Yes, you do. Don't even treat it that way. You hide it the best you can. You act as though there's no imposing, because instead of forcing it, you're indoctrinating it. So don't give me that. Next one. Even secular experts are concerned about hidden effects of poisons and chemicals. Like I said, this isn't just about environmentalists. They only brought that in to make it look worse. We use fertilizers and insecticides. We're just careful to use organic ones. Oh, so what they said before was not quite true. Whether or not they stated it flat out, they implied they don't even do this. So, wait a minute. Something's wrong. What do you mean by environmentalist? Now that is a fair question. We feel an obligation to take care of our land so it'll be useful to the next generation. That would have been a fine answer. If you had just taken those last two sentences on this answer and made it the answer to the whole question, I would have thought nothing of this. I would have been like, I can agree, that is perfectly fine. I may not do the same thing you do, but I can see why you do it and I could agree. However, because they had to throw in all this extra stuff to try and make themselves look better by comparing themselves to the government, there's an issue. Same thing with this next answer. If you use this answer, you'd been fine. It's all this other stuff causes the issue. Now this is a little borderline. Organic methods work in harmony with God's creation, unlike modern methods. They also produce higher quality food, and the farming practice is sustainable, unlike modern approaches. We definitely are not environmentalists, although we do strive to be good stewards. Can sound good. But that start makes me immediately see a hint of what we saw so much of in Blair Adams' answer, which is all that New Age. It doesn't come out and put it as plainly, but there seems to possibly be a hint of it. Okay. Most of these keep going down the same road, so I don't really know that we need to go through all of them. It's interesting, they do seem to have more, excuse me, more of their leadership answering this one than most. Let's go ahead and go on to this next one. Do you grow your food mainly for personal use, or do you grow some to sell to the public? This will be interesting. We believe, along with those early Americans, 70 to 75% of whom farmed, but only for subsistence. That the land is a nurturing habitat for the life of families, creatures, plants, and soil, as these are interrelated to provide for each other. Couldn't you say that about everybody who's doing these methods you're saying you are against? It doesn't matter if you're using it for yourself or you're selling it to the public. That's the same thing in these terms. The only difference is how many people you're supplying. So, can you please stop avoiding the questions and get to the answers? Therefore, our goal is to farm mainly for our own subsistence. Hate that word. With a few surplus goods that offer a sampling of our farming life put on sale at the visitor center. If you know anything about Homestead, if you've gone online and looked them up at all, you know this is an absolute lie. That is not true. Our goal is to supply our other needs and support our many educational programs through the craft businesses. Okay. Hold on. What does that mean? You've got your cafe, your coffee shop, etc., and you're going to tell me that giving things to visitor center is the only time you give it to other people. It's the only time it's for the public. It's all about supplying yourself, except for the visitor center, yet you've got an actual restaurant on site. You do fairs, you do all these things. Stop lying to me. The ignorance in these answers is disgusting. Mainly our own use, although this year we will have cornmeal, sorghum syrup, blah, 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 to sell to the public at the fair. Okay, at least he admits, yes, we do sell a lot. It's so weird to me how they can say that. There are things I know that I've heard from sources who were there, multiple sources, not just one. They don't just take care of all their own food. There's more involved. It's not just a matter of everything they need, they supply. There are some things they don't need, they supply. There's some things they can't supply that they do need. And there's plenty of things they sell to people outside of their community. But this right here, you've got a contradiction. You've got one answer where he specifically states they sell all these things at a public fair and at the visitor center. Here he says it's only at the visitor center. You have two answers that contradict one another. At least one of them has to be a lie. Which one? Or is it both? But this is interesting. What percent of the food that you consume do you grow? Blair Adams. Up to approximately 95%. Up to. He wants to give the implication that, yeah, they take care of 95%. But if 95% is the max, what's the min? Depends on the individual family and how far they have progressed, or how dedicated they are to the vision they have committed to. How much they have progressed. I thought this part was about just day-to-day life, not their religion. I'm being sarcastic, by the way. Moving on. Do you raise and butcher domestic animals for food? Yes. Wow. I am impressed Blair Adams can actually give a one-word answer. Shocking. See, these are all just basic asking, do you kill animals? And it's funny that once they go to those, Blair Adams will just say yes and doesn't do anything to try to defend himself. It's kind of funny that that's the question where he doesn't care if they think he does that. He doesn't care how they look at it. He just says, yeah. It's funny, though, because you got some here who do respond, and I like this one. Not personally, but others do. Okay. So there is no real answer for this because it's everybody individually. There is no overarching theme for the community. So why answer it that way? That's kind of funny. And then here we go. Isn't that violent? Now that he's pushed, he starts to talk. And boy, does he talk. That could be the longest answer I've seen, or at least one of the longest answers I've seen in this document. And I'm not just talking about this part about their way of life. All those pages for Blair Adams' own answer to a 3-word question. This is insane. Now, I'm going to try not to... We'll see what happens, but I'm going to try to just read through this and not blabber too much, but we'll see. This is much more than a controversial question. It has become almost a dogma of our times, and simple answers are often subject to misinterpretation or even misrepresentation. You just gave a simple answer. Okay, whatever. So if you would allow, we'd like to take some care in trying to avoid misunderstanding. First, we're nonviolent people. We do eat meat. Therefore, we have a conflict with those who equate hunting with violence, or even with combat, or at least with the violation of the rights of other living beings. To call killing wild predators violence is to us, however, to fail to recognize that creation will indeed a continuum of life nonetheless has within that continuum given orders, levels, and relationships. Do you realize what just was said here? To call killing wild predators violence is to us, however, to fail to recognize that creation, while indeed a continuum of life nonetheless, has within that continuum given orders, levels, and relationships. They're treating the creation as another god. If not, he really needs to change this answer. Because he's going to be so wordy, go through all this to make sure you understand from a political angle exactly why they do this. And yet, he's going to do this and completely ruin his own theology. He might want to take another look at his priorities. Many today believe, as a medical doctor writing to a newspaper claimed, without documentation, kind of curious, that violence toward animals can lead to violence against people. Yet, aside from the fact that this view vaguely condemns all meat eaters as violent, historically, the view that animals should be treated in precisely the same way one treats people has led not to the better treatment of animals, but rather to the treatment of people as though they were, to use a politically inappropriate term, brutes or vermin. So he's concerned about how something politically inappropriate is going to affect people, but up above, something theologically inappropriate, he doesn't care. Doesn't that raise your concerns? But I will say, I'd say he's completely correct about this. The view that animals should be treated in precisely the same way one treats people has led not to the better treatment of animals, but rather to the treatment of people as though they were brutes or vermin. I will agree. It has lowered how you see other people instead of raising how you see the animals. That's the way I see it. I agree with him on that. But that's not my concern. Seems to be his. It's not mine. Such a simplistic equalism allows those who cling to it to see only what is common to all levels of life, and so always must reduce life to its lowest common denominator, dust, but it sees nothing of the distinctions that clarify each level of being's own unique identity and its place in the continuum of being. The continuum of being. Those two words again. So to them, a rock is merely cohering dust. A tree is simply A photosynthesizing rock. A dog is a barking cabbage and man is a naked ape. Or in their own words, there is no rational basis for separating our human animal out the human animal. A rat is a pig, is a dog, is a boy. They're all animals. Thus, Copenhagen Zoo has now put human beings on exhibit in a cage between lemurs and apes. Can I say? They're doing it again. They're pointing out these issues that are not the issue you are supposed to be discussing. You are trying to make people on the other side look so bad, so incorrect, that people are agreeing with you enough that they'll listen. Got to tell a lot of truth to hide the lies. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I hadn't transitioned. Sorry about that. Did that work? This is so weird. I don't know why it turned that off the way it did. That was not the way I had it set. We good now? If you can hear it now, just let me know. Okay, great. That was bizarre. Okay, so let's just move on and get on to what this was really supposed to be about. Because everything in here, he just keeps repeating himself because he went on that huge tangent. To rule out the possibility of killing wild animals, whether harmful predators or game for food, reduces human dealings with nature to idyllic fantasies. Such fantasies always refuse to accept the one essential of nature, the fact that life in the natural world can only be sustained by and continue through death. And we go to another tangent, which he even puts it in parentheses, and it's very long. So, let's get on to the actual point. To condemn all killing of wildlife as hatred of animals anthropomorphizes animals and is like claiming that the mountain lion hates or holds in contempt the deer it kills. Yet this is not true. The lion merely instinctively knows and accepts a given of its and all natural existence since the fall. Only from a distance, when we see merely the vague forms of nature as with the far-reaching mountains, or when we see nature only in fly-by-night or one-night stand relationships. Here we go again, off on a tangent. Let's go down another road. Let's try to find something that has nothing to do with it. So let's skip ahead once again. To refuse to recognize this fact is not to show one's greater love for nature, but rather to despise its essence and to reject its reality for our own illusions about it. Okay? What we then love is not nature. I could go into my own lecture at this point, but I'm not going to. Which we refuse to relate to on its own terms. But our fantasies of a nature made over according to our own imaginations and our pursuit of painless pleasure. I think he's really making a weird connection here. Very indirect, kind of reaching at straws. I don't see how he can put this together this way, but hey, that's his view. I'm not gonna go on it too much because it's not that big a deal. I choose to participate in nature on its own terms, to relate to love it for what it is rather than what I wish it could or would be. Again, I'm going to keep myself from going down a tangent because I could go on a long time about this one. This means I must participate in nature's course of life and death if I would sustain my life and that of those I love. Makes me curious what exactly he's getting at with this, because I can see multiple ways of taking that. It means further that part of that sustenance will be the eating of meat. And as long as I choose to eat meat, I choose to obtain that meat by participating in what it takes to sustain life. I choose, in short, to, for the most part, raise it or hunt it myself. I still see a lot of questions as to how this really answers the question. So many little things throughout this. I just keep pulling off on these tangents. Don't quite fit what he says he's going to try to answer here. So then he tries to go in and he tries to indirectly bring in a bit of theology. And the problem is, what he does in this is almost under the surface, he's kind of coming against the very thing. It's really weird because it's like he's coming against exactly what he's using to support his own perspective. It's really weird. But let's go ahead and go through it. Part of this process includes protecting from predators the domestic livestock that I raise. I could let others do all my slaughtering for me, whether of plants or of animals, while I pretend to live in a world without pain or death, a world without a curse, and so pour not a drop of my own life into the cycles of life and death, common to all being, and that sustain my own being. I do not choose, however, to abandon my relationship with nature. While I live in fables in my mind, but on my table live off the blood of other creatures, or at least the blood of men who work the fields by the salty sweat of their brows. Once again, you go to that relationship with nature. And you just said, in a negative frame, you would be going without a curse. So in that part, you are coming straight out and admitting to believing the world is in a curse, is under a curse, that all of these struggles and trials and things we have to do to raise life and the way life works is because of this curse. You're admitting that. This curse on nature. And now you're making it all about how you shouldn't abandon this relationship with nature. This may be a very little thing, but I think it makes a big difference. I'm going to change one single word at that point. He says, I do not choose, however, to abandon my relationship with nature. Here's a way I would have been okay with it. I do not choose, however, to abandon my relationship to nature. That is why so much of what he says bothers me, is he always uses just the right wording to make it where this is about a real relationship with nature. Not about having to deal with the curses that are in nature, which he just said you shouldn't avoid. And yet, in this, he's kind of avoiding. Very hypocritical. Not merely the deer, but all of us who participate in sustaining the community of life are in the process of dying for it. Every creature must die. Whether it will die to sustain life or die meaninglessly depends upon whether it's closely bound participating in the community. Whoa, you see the direction we're going now. Now, we're not just using this to try to explain, excuse, show why we think it's okay to hunt and eat animals and use them that way. Now, all of a sudden, we're going down that road of the community again. The one thing they kept pushing on and on and on and on again in that baptismal agreement. They're going right back to the community. How does that get to be the point of this? That might have made a little more sense in the last question, but in this question, I don't see where that fits in. So weird. In the community, the continuum of life that is always striving to ascend towards its transcendent source, or whether it simply unspirals in its descent to chaos and the primordial abyss. The primordial abyss. So, wait. You're an evolutionist? Or do you not understand what that's about? Because those are the kind of terms they use. But die one day or another, it surely will, and from that conflict with death, no rights, animal or otherwise, will ever protect anything or anyone, for there is no discharge from that war. It is because hunting, whether predators or for food, still confronts people with the fact of this primordial conflict, that so many hate it and want to do away with it. If that's what it's all about, is this primordial conflict, why have you not done anything to tell us what that is? The nature of this world is such, however, as Jesus said. Can I make a little notice here? Have we heard that yet? We've gone through a lot of this. And he's brought up things that are religious, things that are practical, etc. Has he really said much to this effect of what Jesus said? Why did it take this long? As Jesus said, that only the dying kernel of wheat sustains the life of wheat on earth. Only life that dies for something higher than itself can sustain other life, and so allow life in general to continue in its struggle to ascend from chaos and death. There is truth to that, and yet think about where he's applying that. Think about how he's applying that. And there are multiple issues. Problem is, raising the questions that come out of that is kind of pointless if he's not here to answer. So, all I can say is this can sound fine, but when you think about where he's applying it, there's an issue. What exactly he's trying to get at with this, he doesn't say clearly enough for me to really know. This is true even with species of plants and animals, but it is also true between species. It is often necessary to sacrifice one form of life for another in order to participate in the continuity of life. Okay? As it flows from one generation and one species to another. Though all life is interdependent and cannot survive apart from the whole order, it in no way follows that a hierarchy of values in life does not exist. Everything has its place in this continuity of sacrifice for the sake of continuity of life. Didn't we just say this? He's going to keep repeating himself. Let's go ahead and start a little bit later on, try to get onto it. On a practical level today, laws indiscriminately protecting predators such as mountain lions, wolves, and bears express a worldview that has both arisen from and helped to create a philosophy leading to growing bad writing here, helped to create a philosophy leading to growing and murderous assaults against human beings. Sounded weird the way that was said. As in the past, Equal respect for all life is now leading to the degradation of the value of human life. The priorities of contemporary culture are askew. The way that ends, talk about going askew. You notice what he did? The whole focus of the question of this was on the lives of the animals. He flipped it and made it all about man. And yes, I think the world has too low a view of that. But it doesn't change the fact that at the end, you've pretty much let go of the real question. I mean, you can use that to add to your answer, but when you make that your whole answer, you haven't really gotten to the question. Now, the rest of these are really short. There's not much to them. Very simple, so not a whole lot more in this. I can say, given the lack of in so many other places, I do, in a sense, appreciate that here in this answer, he does at least give some passages. I don't want to go into them and how they may be used, misused, whatever. I'll just say, at least he tried going to Scripture. Even when this answer goes and mentions Jesus, it doesn't give you any references. It's kind of a bad habit that you see in a lot of the books and other places. At least here they give you something. What if the animals you trap or kill to protect your livestock are protected by the government? If we've killed protected predators, we're unaware of it. That's fine, but can you give your actual perspective on that? Because you didn't do anything to answer the question with that. All you did was go into self-defense. Which makes me wonder what's really going on. Because if that's your first step, and you completely ignore the question, and you just go into the self-defense mode, it makes me worry what's there that you're hiding. It's just my concern. The law provides an exception for killing even a protected animal if it is being destructive. So you have done it and you are aware. Or are you bringing this up in response to that first answer? I'm not sure what the point of this is. It, again, doesn't really answer the question. Finally, we follow state and federal guidelines. So you do. After two other answers, go and give your reasons why you might have without knowing or might have with a good reason. Now all of a sudden you just say you don't. Contradictions in the answers of this list are insane. Now here's the best answer, to be honest. If it wasn't for what happened before that, and they only gave this one, I would think nothing of it. I don't believe we have killed beasts on this land in Waco that are protected animals. That right there would have been a good answer. The first three make it curious. So that's it for that section. In the future, we can go on to the craft and farm businesses. Now, this is where it's going to be interesting. You'll notice the first question. Did you make all the craft items displayed at the fair or in your store? So right there, they come straight out and point out what Blair Adams tried to treat as not being there earlier. Kind of ironic. But we'll get to that next time. Really hope you guys having a good week. It's been a wild one here. So much happening, so much going on. I've been, last 2 weeks or so, I've been just overload. So I am going to try to do this again 2-3 weeks. But like I said, there's so much happening. It's very hard to know for certain if I'll be able to or not. You might even notice I've got a whole nother setup now. I've moved things around on my desk so that I can get more natural lighting on myself for these streams so that I don't have all the artificial lighting that causes issues. And this seems to be working a lot better for me. So hopefully in the future, if things pick up, if we can get more discussions going, if things happen, hopefully I can even do longer live streams and it not be an issue. We'll see. But that's the kind of stuff I'm working on right now because I'm also doing other channels. I'm starting other things online, different ministries and stuff. So it's been wild. Things have been really hectic in a sense, but also so rewarding. It's been amazing, some of the people I've run into, some of the things that have happened. So I'm just really grateful, even though it's stressing a bit. So I hope you guys are doing well. I hope things go well for you. And right now, I'm still looking for anything that's going on at Homestead. It's been hard to find a whole lot. Anyone knows anything of what's going on, anybody's heard anything, would appreciate an update. I'm not expecting a whole lot right now, but there are some things in the future that could happen, so I'm going to keep my eyes on it, going to keep alert. I'll let you know if I find anything. So, see you guys later. Hope you have a good rest of the week.